Now you notice in verse 2 of chapter 6, I can just pull that up a minute. And a great multitude followed him, because they saw his miracles which he did on them that were diseased. Well, John has only listed the nobleman's son. He could be assuming, of course, that, well, you've got all the knowledge of that from the Synoptic Gospels. But what he's likely doing is he's introducing some explanation to go, or some elaboration to go with his next miracle. So Jesus went up into the mountain, and there he sat with his disciples. And the Passover, now we see we're not just saying a feast, we're specific now. No, this is Passover. Feast of the Jews was nigh. When Jesus then lifted up his eyes and saw a great company come unto him, not just his disciples, he saith unto Philip, Oh, whence shall we buy bread, that these may eat? And this he said to prove him, Philip, for he himself knew what he would do. Yes, I guess so. Philip answered him, 200 pennyworth of bread's not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take a little. And one of it, did you need to elaborate like this? That's pretty obvious. You just say, oh, how are you going to do that? We don't have the cash. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, saith unto him, There's a lad here which has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. But what are they among so many? Is this a tease? Because Andrew is expecting a phenomenal, he's expecting a miracle. I don't know. And he has the men sit down on the grass. And we're only talking about men, about 5,000. I would assume there were women there as well, but still. Jesus took the loaves, and when he'd given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down, and likewise of the fishes as much as they would. And when they were filled, he said unto his disciples, Gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. And therefore they gathered them together, and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. Then those men, when they had seen the miracle that the fish... hang on, let me pause a minute. I want to pull out something there. He picked up the fragments of the barley loaves, not the fish. Right? Okay. This is of the truth, the prophet that should come into the world. When Jesus therefore perceived that they would come and take him by force to make him a king, he departed again into a mountain himself alone. And when even was come, his disciples went down unto the sea, and entered into a ship, and went over the sea towards Capernaum, and so forth. So we get on to the next miracle. Right, so we've got the 4th miracle here, which is the feeding of the 5,000 men anyway. Now this is a really extravagant miracle, isn't it? I mean, we may not have listed much in the way of miracles to date, but suddenly John goes overboard and we're doing the 5,000. Well, 5 is the number of grace. It's written all over the temple. Specification in ancient scripture as to how the temple was to be built. And again, the 5,000 are not to be despised. It's something that is absolutely right about them, in this case, the people. grace is going to be shown to them for being there. 3 days out in the wilderness and so on, listening to Jesus without food. Or at least most of them were out without food by then. The bread is precious because, of course, it doesn't go off like fish would. Bread is symbolic of valid food in some sense for the Israelite. This is food from heaven. Fish are a symbol of it's a symbol of life that can exist in water. But, I'm pushing it here, the chosen are not going to be in the water, the world any longer, the material. They're going to be in the spiritual, in the heavens. It's also consistent with a value thing going on that well, a lot of the Gnostics are vegetarian. So again, the fish represent a food that the saved wouldn't be eating because it requires killing of life, whereas bread doesn't. It's the sort of general view. 5,000 is to indicate, again, the total acceptability of now the people. They're numbering 5,000. I mean, were they exactly 5,000? They put them down in ranks so they could actually know the specific number of people that were there. But that's not the point. 5 is very important in a symbolic sense, so 5,000 it is. In what way is this explanation to the last, the previous miracle that we dealt with? Well, these people had taken the initiative not to go and stay laying at the pool for years in the middle of the city, but out following Jesus to hear his teaching into the wilderness or whatever it was, wherever he was preaching, far from the towns. Grace is to be extended to them, hence the 5,000. It's symbolic. God will meet them in their need. It's what the true temple is. It meets you in your need. For instance, the temple of your body houses the Holy Spirit, has a need to be here to learn in this world. So God gives us a body, physical, and feeds these 5,000 in their need. Goes without saying, doesn't it? There's no indication that the impotent man then followed Jesus. If anything, to the contrary. These 5,000, on the other hand, go out and listen to him for days on end. Because they want to know how to live. How should they be living? What do they need to know? They are looking for spiritual worth, aren't they? They're seeking the spiritual. Bethesda man wasn't. He just wanted a physical healing. In fact, he was impotent. It's not even clear he wanted it. Perhaps he received more from begging, I don't know. Perhaps his relatives were sustaining him there with food each day. The 5,000 being fed are an example of how to follow, in stark contrast to how not to respond in the way of the impotent man, which of course stands for Israel in general, or at least the religion side of it, the religious people. The contrast then gives us the explanation for Jesus' ministry. It's come to those that have ears to hear, those that are truly seeking, not just wanting a quick fix miracle for continually living in this world. Therefore the material is added unto the 5,000. They need food. God provides it. Thank you, Lord. Notice, where we started, he goes up to a mount. It's a high place. God talks from the heights, from heaven. He's elevated. He's to be taken very seriously. And you take the trouble to go to him. You go to the holy place. And it's not necessarily in the middle of the city by any means. Not sure about, how long they were there, whether this is the 3-day one that information we had from the synoptics or not, but it's a detail, isn't it? God comes to you all the time. You couldn't breathe but for God. You'd have no air to breathe, in fact, nor would you even exist. That doesn't mean to say you're potent, you're alive. You could be utterly heedless of him. But here we got 5,000 or more that go out to him. If it's a mountain, I'm not sure if it's a mount or a mountain, but if it's a mountain, okay. They go out, they seek him out. Quite literally, they follow him. They don't lay there waiting for it to happen. How do you follow spiritually? You deliberately do the things that are right as opposed to the things that are wrong. And as opposed to doing nothing. Is this salvation by works? No, it's a salvation by request. My part is tiny, Father, but I'm so willing to do it. For your grace and goodness. You do the lion's share, the 99.99%. Always. Love you, Lord. Thank you, Dad.